We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
Heath. This is an interesting question. Heath reached out to GiK for some advice while finalizing his room design. They made the following statement about dual subs in opposing corners. Here we go. This is from GiK. The diagonal sub setup I would not recommend. Either do both front or both rear, or one center front and one center rear better according to the Harman research. Doing diagonals just excites a lot of additional problems, not to mention killing our ability to symmetrically treat the room for bass. Left-right symmetry is critical, so we don't want to treat the other two diagonal corners. Both front and both rear is what you want to go for. This is for the subs, both front or both rear.
Yes, that was the response.
Heath knows placement. He knows about placement on opposing walls. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast. He says, if possible, this is the best placement, but is opposing corners really a worse option than both subs on a single wall? What should he tell GiK to get the best room treatment plan? You should not tell them. You should just order the stuff and not talk to them anymore, because whoever you talk to over there does not know what they're talking about.
Well, I mean, I understand how this arrived.
Well, the part of it is that they want you to put bass traps in all four corners. Okay, so they do not want you to put subs there because they want you to put bass traps in all four corners. Now, I have no idea why on God's green earth they would say to you that it is not a good idea that symmetrically placing bass traps is more important than having subwoofers in the right places, but it doesn't make sense to me. Okay, let me just go ahead and assuage your fears here. You can use corner placements and you can put bass traps in the other two corners, and you are going to be, that was exactly what I would do. That is what Rob would do. That's the way America did it, and it's worked out so far, good so far. So, that's it. So, two in the front, two in the back, that's ridiculous. That's old school stuff, and it doesn't really work. Yes, center placement or opposing placements on walls that aren't in corners are fine as well, but corners work just fine.
Yeah, so just to remind folks, Heath is the fellow who had that basement setup where he had that water system, the water softener, and
I'm going to have to look at this.
Yeah, the water softener and the whatever that other thing was, water thing, but he's going to be putting a false wall there and then building around that. You remember Heath.
Yes.
Yeah, just as a reminder, but I know where GiK is coming from in this, because if you go back to that Harman research, if you go by the math, by the prediction that was made, it was predicted that two subwoofers in diagonally opposite corners would not produce as uniform and even bass as what actually ended up happening when they did real-world measurements. When they physically set up subwoofers in a real room and measured it, it turned out better. And the explanation, this is oversimplifying it, but the basic explanation is, well, when they modeled the room, it was a perfect room. It's a perfect rectangle with perfectly flat walls, with perfectly reflective walls. And when you build a real room, it's not a perfect rectangle. The walls aren't perfectly flat and they aren't perfectly reflective. And there was basically enough variables in the real room, once you actually construct it, that you got higher modal density than what the math predicted. That the room is uneven enough when you construct it that it didn't work out exactly in line with the math. Now, to be completely clear, the math predicted that having one at the center of the front wall and the center of the back wall, or the center of the two side walls, would be better. And when they measured it, it was better. Yeah. So we're all in agreement there, and that's fine. Heath already knows that. But the diagonally opposite corner placement works better in real life than it does according to the math. So I believe that GiK is basically going by the math. And again, if you go by the math and you have two subs up at the front of the room and you treat the heck out of the room, you can sort of brute force your way into making that work. And since GiK is a company that sells bass traps and acoustic treatments, they're like, hey, we can solve this problem. We can solve the problem with two subs at the front of your room.
I think you're giving them too much credit, dude.
It takes a lot. Well, but I'm just sort of explaining where they're coming from. But here's what I would tell Heath. I would go back to GiK and I would say, you know what? I've decided to get 4 subwoofers and put one in each corner. Now model my room for me. Then in real life, just do 2 diagonally opposite corner subs because it'll work out just fine.
Yeah. I wouldn't do any of that. To be honest with you, I wouldn't do any of that. First of all, I don't agree with Rob. I don't think that they are. I don't think that they are making a mistake because they're going by the math and whatever. I don't think that's what's happening here. I think this is just somebody who doesn't. I mean, I don't think that you're talking to Glenn. Was he talking to Glenn? He wasn't talking to Glenn, was he?
Might be, because Glenn does a lot of that stuff himself. So
if that's the case, if it is Glenn that you're talking to, then it could well be. But he should. I read that and guess what? I skimmed it because I'm not. That thing is forever long. But if you go to the end and you just read the summary and stuff, it's what it's going to say. It said just what Rob said, which was we predicted that the math predicted, the models predicted that the midpoints of opposing walls was the best. It was. The model predicted that opposing corners would be bad, but it wasn't.
Well, not bad, but just not as good as it actually turned out to be.
Exactly. That's what it predicts. It says it right there in the article. So it could very well. I don't know why he's saying that, other than, and I don't believe that GiK is this way, other than to try to sell you more traps, which honestly, I don't think. I've never had an experience with them that makes me think that that's what they would do. I think that the person that you were talking to was not Glenn, I hope, and that they were just misinformed. So I would say, listen, I am going to put, you could do what Rob said, but I would still get the corner traps, that you're planning on getting. We'll
just tell them you're going to have, subwoofers that aren't that large and that you can still treat the corner, just maybe not the bottom 1.5 of it or something like that.
I just, whatever. Yeah, it's a very silly thing to say. This thing right here is all very silly, and that is a better according to the Harman research that the center, front, and right. But I have no idea why they immediately went off there.
Well, the other thing was in the Harman research, 2 subs at the front or 2 subs at the back was never the best choice ever. Not in the Harman research. So
not in the predictions.
That is weird. That I can't explain.
Yeah, and that's why I think that this is just misinformation from somebody who's got some of the story, but not all of it. And I think at this point they're just trying. This person, who I hope is not Glenn, is trying to sell you more traps. And while that's good for the company, it's not really good for the company for them to be spreading misinformation. Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.